My wife sat on my best friend's lap at my own birthday dinner and then told me I was the one ruining the night by having a problem with it. Delia and Colton got along from the start. She thought he was hilarious. He thought she was good for me. They'd joke around at barbecues and give each other a hard time the way friends do. I never worried about it. Not once. I trusted both of them completely. The problem started about a year ago. Small things. Delia started texting Colton directly instead of going through me. She'd send him jokes and memes and he'd respond, and sometimes they'd have entire conversations I wasn't part of. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be that husband. The jealous one. The insecure one. Then it got bigger. Delia started suggesting we invite Colton to everything. Every dinner. Every movie night. Every weekend plan. If I said let's go out just the two of us, she'd say we should bring Colton because he's probably bored. If I planned a date night, she'd ask if Colton wanted to join. I told her once that I wanted time alone with her. She said I was being possessive and that most men would love it if their wife got along with their best friend. I stopped bringing it up. Colton didn't seem to notice anything strange. Or maybe he did, and he liked it. I couldn't tell. He was the same Colton around me. Same jokes. Same loyalty. But when Delia was in the room, something shifted. He'd look at her a beat too long. He'd laugh at things she said that weren't that funny. He'd find excuses to stand near her. Maybe I was imagining it. I told myself I was imagining it. Then came my birthday. I turned 31. Delia planned a dinner at a restaurant downtown. She invited Colton, our friends Mitch and Sonia, and my coworker Hale and his wife. 8 people total. Nice table in the back. Delia sat next to me at first. Colton was across the table. Everything was normal for about an hour. We ordered food. We talked. Mitch told a story about his dog escaping and ending up at a gas station 2 towns over. Everyone was laughing. Then the chairs got shuffled when Sonia moved to take a phone call outside. Delia got up to use the restroom, and when she came back, she didn't sit in her chair next to me. She walked around the table and sat on Colton's lap. Not the empty chair next to him. Not the chair Sonia had left open. His lap. She put her arm around his shoulder and leaned into him and said there aren't enough chairs, and laughed. There were 2 empty chairs. 2. I could see them from where I was sitting. Mitch looked at me. Hale looked at his wife. Colton put his hand on Delia's waist like it belonged there. Not awkward. Not unsure. Like he'd done it before. That's what hit me. It wasn't the lap sitting. It was how natural it looked. It was how neither of them flinched. It was how Colton's hand went to her waist without hesitation, like muscle memory. Delia looked over at me and smiled. She smiled at me while sitting on another man's lap at my birthday dinner, like she was doing something cute. I set my fork down. I said, Delia, there are 2 empty chairs. She said, oh, relax. It's your birthday. Just have fun. Colton didn't say anything. He just sat there with my wife on his lap and his hand on her waist, looking at me like he was waiting to see what I'd do. I looked at Mitch. Mitch was staring at his plate. Hale was suddenly very interested in his drink. Nobody said a word. I stood up. I put cash on the table to cover my portion of the bill. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. Delia asked what I was doing. I told her I was leaving. She said I was ruining my own birthday. I told her she already did that. I walked out of the restaurant. I drove home. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time. About 40 minutes later, Delia came home in a rideshare. She walked inside and found me sitting at the table. She told me I embarrassed her in front of everyone. I told her she sat on another man's lap in front of everyone at my birthday dinner. She said Colton wasn't another man. He was my best friend. I asked her why his hand went to her waist that fast. She said she didn't notice. I asked her how many times she sat on his lap before. She said that was a crazy question. I said it wasn't crazy because people don't touch like that the first time. She told me I was making something out of nothing. I asked her one more time. How many times? She wouldn't answer. I got up from the table. I went to our bedroom. I packed a bag with enough clothes for a week. Delia followed me and asked what I was doing. I told her I was going to stay with Mitch until I figured out what came next. She said I was throwing away 5 years over a chair. I told her it wasn't a chair. It was his lap. And she chose it over the seat right next to her husband on his birthday. I called Mitch from the driveway. He said come over. He didn't ask why. He already knew. I stayed at Mitch's for 9 days. During that time, Delia called every day. She never apologized. Every call was about how I was being ridiculous, how I made everyone uncomfortable by walking out, how Colton felt terrible and wanted to talk to me. I didn't call Colton. He didn't call me either. That told me everything. A best friend since age 8 who watched me walk out of a restaurant because of something he did and didn't pick up the phone once in 9 days. He knew what it was, and he knew I knew. On the 10th day, I went back to the house. Not because I was ready, because I needed clothes for work, and because Mitch had a look on his face that morning like he wanted to tell me something but didn't know how. I asked him straight. He set his coffee down and said he'd debated saying anything but figured he owed me honesty over comfort. He told me that 2 months before my birthday, he'd gone to pick up a charger he left at Colton's apartment. Colton wasn't expecting him that early. Mitch knocked. No answer. Tried the handle because Colton never locked his door. He walked in, and Delia was there, sitting on the couch, shoes off, her jacket on Colton's chair, a glass of water on the coffee table with lipstick on the rim. Colton came out of the bedroom in a t-shirt he clearly just pulled on. His hair was wrong. That's how Mitch described it. His hair was wrong, like someone had run their hands through it and he hadn't checked a mirror. Mitch said the air in the room was wrong. Not panicked, not guilty, just interrupted, like he'd walked into the middle of something that had a rhythm to it. He said Delia smiled at him and said she'd dropped something off for me and was just leaving. She didn't have anything in her hands. Mitch grabbed his charger and left. He told me he sat in his car for 10 minutes trying to decide if what he saw meant what he thought it meant. He said he almost called me that night but talked himself out of it because he didn't want to blow up my life based on a feeling. He said he'd been carrying it since. I asked him why he didn't tell me before my birthday. He said because he was hoping he was wrong and didn't want to be the guy who accused my wife and my best friend of something based on a couch and a jacket. I told him I understood. I did. Mitch isn't the type to drop a grenade unless he's certain it's live. But sitting in his spare room hearing him say it, I realized the grenade had already gone off and I'd just been standing in the blast radius pretending the ringing in my ears was normal. I drove to the house. Delia wasn't there. Her car was gone. I walked through the front door and stood in the living room and looked at the space the way you look at a room after someone dies. Everything the same but nothing the same. I went to the bedroom. Made myself open her nightstand drawer. Nothing. Went to her closet. Looked through coat pockets. Nothing. Then I checked her tablet on the bedside table. She used the same password for everything. Our anniversary date. The irony sat in my stomach like battery acid. I found what I was looking for in about 4 minutes. It wasn't hidden. That's the part that still makes me feel something close to sick. She hadn't even tried to bury it. Their messages were in a regular text thread. Not a hidden app, not a burner number. Just her phone's default messaging right there next to conversations with her mother and her hairstylist and a group chat about a coworker's baby shower. It was filed alphabetically under his name like everything else in her life. That's how little she respected me. She didn't even think I was worth the effort of hiding it properly. The messages went back 7 months. Not the memes and jokes I knew about. A second layer underneath those. The early ones were flirty, but deniable. Miss your face. Why are you always funnier when he's not around? You're trouble and I like it. Then they escalated. By month 3, it was explicit. Times, locations, what happened, and what she wanted to happen again. She'd text him on Monday nights confirming Tuesday. He'd respond with an address he didn't need to send because they both already knew it by heart, but he sent it anyway like a ritual. Like a confirmation number for a recurring reservation. Colton's apartment every Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. My truck barely out of the driveway before she was in her car driving to his place. She told him once that she felt guilty, but not enough to stop. He responded that he stopped feeling guilty a while ago. 7 months. They'd been meeting at his apartment every week for 7 months. 28 Tuesdays, give or take. I counted later when I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of our bed holding her tablet and I didn't feel what I thought I'd feel. I expected rage or grief or the cinematic collapse where a man throws things and screams. What I felt was something flatter, colder, like a machine shutting down one system at a time. The love went first, then the anger, then the hurt. What was left was arithmetic. 5 years of marriage, 7 months of lies, 23 years of friendship with Colton, 8 people at a birthday dinner watching my wife sit on another man's lap, 2 empty chairs she walked past to get to him, 1 husband who walked out, 0 phone calls from his best friend in 9 days. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every timestamp, every detail that proved this wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness, but a scheduled recurring decision they both made over and over for 7 months. Sent them to my own email. Then to a second email I set up on the spot just in case. Then I put the tablet back exactly where I found it. Screen dark, same angle on the nightstand. I packed 2 suitcases this time instead of 1 bag. Work clothes, personal documents, the external hard drive with our financial records, the folder with our tax returns from the last 3 years. I took my birth certificate and passport from the filing cabinet. I took the $800 in emergency cash we kept in the hallway closet because I was the one who put it there in the first place. I left my ring on the counter next to the coffee maker where she'd see it first thing in the morning. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. I just didn't want to carry it anymore. I drove back to Mitch's, told him what I found. He didn't say I told you so. He just opened a beer and set it in front of me and sat down across the table. We didn't talk for about 20 minutes. Then he said, "What are you going to do?" And I told him I was going to do exactly what a man does when his wife and his best friend have been lying to him for 7 months. I called a lawyer the next morning. Not a friend of a friend. Not a referral from some guy at work. I looked up the highest rated family law attorney in our area and made an appointment for that afternoon. Her name was Vivian Price and she was exactly what I needed. Clinical, direct, no sympathy speeches. She asked me how I wanted this to go. I told her clean and fast. She said that depended on whether Delia would cooperate or fight. I told her Delia would fight because Delia believed she hadn't done anything wrong. Vivian said that was fine. She dealt with that kind of person regularly, and they always cooperated eventually, once they realized the alternative was worse. I gave her the screenshots. She reviewed them and said the timeline alone was devastating. She said she'd file within the week. That night Delia called. 14 missed calls in 3 hours. I answered the 15th because the ringing was making Mitch's dog anxious, and I figured I owed the dog some peace. Her voice was shaking. She said she came home and found the ring and the empty closet and she wanted to know what was happening. I told her I knew about Colton. She went quiet. Not the quiet of someone processing. The quiet of someone recalculating. I could almost hear the gears turning. Then she said it wasn't what I thought. I told her I'd read 7 months of messages. She asked how I got into her tablet. I told her she used our anniversary as a password, which was the saddest detail in this entire situation. She started crying. She said it started as nothing. She said Colton was going through a hard time and she was just being a friend and it escalated and she didn't know how to stop it. I asked her when it started being physical. She said it didn't matter. I said it did because my lawyer was going to ask. She said 4 months. The messages said 7. Even now, even caught, she was still lying. Trimming the timeline like a few months of deception were more forgivable than a few more. I told her she'd be hearing from my attorney. She asked me to come home so we could talk. I said there was nothing to talk about. She said we had 5 years together and I was going to throw it all away without even trying to work through it. I told her she threw it away every Tuesday afternoon for 7 months while I was at my desk working overtime to pay for the house she was leaving to go to his apartment. That ended the call. Colton tried next. 2 days later. A text, not a call. A text that said, "Hey man, can we talk about this?" 23 years of friendship and he opens with, "Hey man," like we had a scheduling conflict, like we disagreed about where to eat. I didn't respond. He sent another one that night, longer. Said he was sorry. Said it just happened. Said he never meant for it to go this far. Said he valued our friendship and hoped we could get past this someday. Get past this. Like he'd borrowed my lawnmower and forgot to return it. Like he'd accidentally scratched my truck in a parking lot. Not like he'd been sleeping with my wife in his apartment every week for 7 months while sitting across from me at dinner tables and poker nights and 4th of July barbecues, shaking my hand and calling me brother. He used to call me brother. He said it at my wedding. He said it in his best man speech. He stood in front of 80 people and said, "This man is my brother and I'd do anything for him." Anything apparently included my wife every Tuesday between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. I blocked his number, deleted the contact, took down the framed photo of us fishing at Lake Walden when we were 12, put it in a box in the garage with the rest of the things that turned out to be lies. The divorce filing hit Delia like a freight train. She called Mitch's house because I'd blocked her cell. Mitch answered and handed me the phone. She was crying again. She said I was being cruel. She said couples go through rough patches and throwing away a marriage without counseling was extreme. I asked her if she'd suggested counseling to Colton any of those Tuesday afternoons, or if the idea only occurred to her after she got caught. She hung up. Her mother called me the next day. She said Delia told her I was leaving over a misunderstanding and asked if I'd consider giving it another chance. months. I told her mother exactly what happened. Every detail. The lap at the restaurant, the messages, the 7 months, the Tuesday schedule, the password. I told her I didn't enjoy telling her any of this, but I wasn't going to let Delia rewrite the story. Her mother didn't speak for a long time. Then she said she was sorry and that she wouldn't call again. She kept that promise. Delia hired her own attorney. She tried to fight the division of assets. She wanted the house. Vivian expected this. She'd already documented everything. The house was purchased with my down payment from savings I had before the marriage. The mortgage was in my name. Delia had contributed roughly $11,000 to household expenses over 5 years, while I'd covered everything else, including the renovation of the back deck and the new roof I put on 8 months before all this happened. Vivian presented the financial breakdown alongside the messages I'd recovered. She also subpoenaed Colton's apartment lease records to confirm occupancy dates that matched the message timeline. The messages were relevant because Delia had been spending joint money on things connected to the affair. Gas for the weekly drives to Colton's place. New clothes purchased on our shared credit card that I now understood were not for me. A hotel receipt from a weekend she told me she was visiting her college friend in Portland. She never went to Portland. The credit card showed charges at a resort 90 minutes south of the city. Same weekend, Colton posted a photo from a hiking trail near that same resort with the caption, "Needed this." Vivian laid all of it out in a settlement proposal. Delia's attorney reviewed it and recommended she accept. She resisted for 2 weeks. Then she signed. I got the house. She got her car and her personal savings. We split the joint account, which had about $4,200 in it by then. She moved into an apartment on the east side of town. I didn't ask where, didn't care. The house felt wrong after she left. Not because I missed her, but because every room had a version of her in it that I now knew was a performance. The couch where she sat texting Colton while I made dinner. The bed where she slept next to me on Tuesday nights after spending the afternoon with him. The front door she walked through 1,000 times carrying grocery bags and smiling at me, and I never once thought the smile was hiding something. I repainted every room. Started on a Saturday morning and didn't stop until Tuesday night. New couch, new bedding, new towels in the bathroom because she'd picked those too. I ripped out the carpet in the hallway because she'd chosen it and I didn't want to stand on her choices anymore. Replaced it with hardwood that I cut and laid myself because I needed something to do with my hands that wasn't calling someone who deserved to hear from me. Mitch helped me with the floors on the second weekend. We worked in silence mostly. He'd hand me tools without me asking. He'd measure twice and cut once and never complained about the sawdust in his hair. That's the kind of friend he is. Doesn't need to process. Doesn't need to talk about it. Just shows up with work gloves and stays until the job is done. Hale came by a few weeks after the divorce was final. Sat on my porch and told me something I wasn't expecting. He said the night of my birthday dinner, after I walked out, Delia didn't get off Colton's lap right away. She stayed there for another 10 seconds before Mitch said something under his breath that made her move. Hale said Colton looked irritated when she finally got up. Not embarrassed. Irritated. Like the interruption bothered him more than the fact that her husband had just left the restaurant. Hale said his wife hadn't been able to stop talking about it. She told Hale that night that if he ever did anything like that, she'd leave him in the parking lot. He said he agreed with her. He said he'd wanted to tell me sooner, but wasn't sure it was his place. I told him it wasn't his fault. None of this was anyone's fault, except the two people who decided my trust was less important than whatever they were getting from each other behind my back. That was 8 months ago. I still live in the house. New paint, new floors, new furniture, same address, but a different place. I go to work. I come home. I cook meals I actually want to eat instead of whatever Delia had planned. I watch what I want. I go to bed when I'm tired. Some nights I sit on the back deck I built with my own hands and just breathe. Mitch comes over on Fridays. We grill. We talk about nothing. Sometimes Hale and Sonia join. Nobody mentions Delia. Nobody mentions Colton. They don't need to. The empty space where those names used to be says enough. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Delia and Colton tried dating after the divorce. Lasted about 6 weeks. Turns out the thing that held them together was the secret. Once it wasn't forbidden anymore, it wasn't interesting. Once there was no husband to betray and no friendship to violate, the whole thing lost its charge. She moved. He stayed. I heard he started going to a different gym and a different bar and basically rearranged his entire life to avoid the circles I was in. Good. I don't know where either of them is now, and I don't spend time wondering. People ask me if I'm angry. I was. For about 3 weeks I was so angry I couldn't eat. Then it passed. What replaced it wasn't peace exactly. More like clarity. I can see the whole thing now from a distance. And what I see is two people who didn't have the spine, to be honest, and one person who trusted too long because he thought loyalty was mutual. I don't blame myself for trusting. I blame them for making trust feel stupid. I turned 32 last month. Mitch took me to a steakhouse. Just the two of us. He ordered for both of us because he said I take too long reading menus. We ate. We laughed. He gave me a pocket knife with my initials on it and said, "Happy birthday, you boring man." I said thanks. It was the best birthday I've had in years. Nobody sat on anyone's lap. Nobody's hand went anywhere it shouldn't. Just two guys, a good steak, and a friendship that never had to be tested because it was already proven. Delia sent me a message a few weeks ago. First contact in months. She said she'd been doing a lot of reflecting and she hoped I was well. I read it once. I didn't respond. Some reflections come too late to matter.